right, guys, we're talking about jobs and job hunting and all the rest of it. Now we're moving on to redundancy, which is a form of dismissal from your job. Happens when employers need to reduce the workforce. And if you're being made redundant, you might be eligible for certain things. Share that list with us this morning. We've got Gavin Goff, partner with Myers, Fletcher, and Gordon, Jamaica. Welcome, sir, to Smile. How are you?
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
It's good to have you and good to see you. All is well, sir?
Can't complain as much as we might have things to complain about, you know. We have jobs, some of us still.
Okay.
And those who don't, we're going to talk about what you can do.
Yeah, you're giving me the great segue into talking about this. So, so many folks now are in this position, Gavin, but we hear about redundancy, we hear about layoff, we hear about furlough. What are some of the other terms, Harris? So many different terms, but Gavin, they all mean something different, no?
Yeah, layoff and redundancy are the ones which are most applicable to Jamaica, and they do mean something different. You know, people who have been on layoff, basically it's a suspension of the employment relationship. So you don't work and you don't get any pay for a period of time. And then if that doesn't work, you know, that's supposed to give a business some breathing room to be able to recover from a pandemic like this. If that doesn't work, then we're talking about redundancy and what employees and employers have to pay or receive when they are made redundant.
All right. So in some instances, people have been laid off for more than 4 months, Gavin. What should an employee do in a situation like that?
Well, at that point in time, they generally will have an option under our law to elect to be dismissed by reason of redundancy. That assumes that they have not been paid, not been working for that period of time. If they have been brought back in a different role, they may not be entitled, or they may be entitled at some later point in time. But certainly electing to be dismissed by reason of redundancy is a right that employees have under Jamaican law. And there's a form that they would need to send to the employer to start that process.
Why would you elect to be made redundant?
Well, in some cases, it's because that's the way that you trigger the redundancy payment that's going to be made to you. If you don't elect, then you will continue to be without any income, perhaps, and without that redundancy payment. So it's really accessing that statutory benefit, which was intended to create a buffer for you during this time when you're job hunting.
Okay.
But when you say it's a right, what if your company is not? Because you can ask for it and be told no.
Well, if you're entitled to it, no, you can't be told no. You might be told not no. You might be told, give me, you know, some months or even a year or so to pay. But if you are eligible under a law, then no, you really.
And how are you eligible under law, Gavin?
If you've been employed for at least 2 years uninterrupted, and if the reason that you are not now employed or you have been laid off is as a result of there being not enough work for you to do, which is common during this time, then typically you might then be entitled to a redundancy payment. There's some variations, you know, there's some circumstances where you might have a certain clause in your contract which might deny that right to you, which you would have had to have signed to. But generally speaking, if you are an employee, at least 2 years uninterrupted service, then you would be eligible for a redundancy payment.
All right, so let's talk about that. If you're made redundant or you elect to be made redundant, what are you entitled to? What are you entitled to receive from the employer?
Right. Well, the primary thing is a redundancy payment. The formula, which is set out in our statute, is 2 weeks pay for every year of service up to 10 years and then 3 weeks pay thereafter. Now, some business places have a better formula in place. And so you would be using whatever formula they have as long as it's better. You would also be entitled sometimes to notice or pay in lieu of notice, as well as payment in respect of any unused vacation. And lastly, sometimes you're entitled to the return of pension contributions or even a retirement benefit.
Okay.
You say that there are 4 main mistakes that employers tend to make when they're calculating redundancy payments. And I saw you post the other day a redundancy calculator. Yes. That you sat and devised. Talk to me a little bit. Is it that employees usually end up shortchanged when they get that check?
Sometimes, and it's not deliberate in many occasions. It's just that the formula itself isn't necessarily easy to find or to follow. And so there are common mistakes that people make. And that's why we decided that, this is a first for, I think, any business or law firm, certainly in Jamaica, that would make it easier for you. So we put a calculator there on our website. It will 9 times out of 10, probably 9.9 times out of 10, it will give you the exact amount that you would be entitled to receive once you are following the statutory formula. If you have a different formula, of course, it probably wouldn't give you the correct figure.
All right.
But really what it's supposed to do is supposed to help with some of those glitches, including, for instance, the white rate to round up or round down, depending on where you are in your in between anniversary years. It also, for instance, includes that minimum threshold of 2 years. A lot of people don't know that you have to be employed for 2 years first. And it also gives you some other guidance in terms of how to pick the dates and how to guide you in terms of the right compensation figure to enter. So it's really easy to use. It's something we thought would be a very useful tool, and we've been seeing quite a lot of use of it. I think over 700 calculations have been done since last week, Wednesday alone. So I think it's really receiving some good traction, and we're happy for that.
All right. Is the payment taxed when you receive redundancy? Should that be taken out of it?
In most instances, it is below the income tax threshold. Okay. Most instances means that you are employed for at least 3 years, not 2, at least 3 years. You haven't received a significant bump in your pay in those last 3 years, and you are using the statutory formula, not a higher one. Mm-hmm. If those conditions are met, generally you will find that you will get the entire redundancy payment, some tax-free. The other payments I mentioned, like unused vacation, notice pay, those are taxed as normal.
All right. In the instance, you're laid off, and you say, listen, I want my redundancy payment because it's been a while, and I need a buffer to move on. And the employer says, I want to offer you your job back, but I need some time for the business to recover.
Yeah.
Or you've taken your redundancy payment, and the boss say, I want to offer you your job back. What do you do?
Well, that's an interesting case because, as your last guest said, the market right now, there's an oversupply of labor in the market. So if you are being offered your job back, that's sometimes a very good thing, because some businesses, they really can't afford the more experienced people, even if they've been with you for a long time. And they are paying out redundancy and offering jobs to people right out of university sometimes. So if you are offered your job back, you need to be very careful about how you make that decision, especially because when you are to start back is very important, and whether you can have an income until then, or if you really need that money right now, and also having a conversation as to whether the business is in a position to pay you that sum right now. Because the alternative, unfortunately, the law isn't really as enforceable as we would like it to be. Sometimes taking an employer to court to collect a redundancy payment can be a long and tedious process. So it's a tough decision in each case as to whether you should be waiting or you should be electing, whether you should be accepting some other arrangement in the meanwhile, or you should be trying to collect on your full entitlement under the redundancy laws. But one thing is very clear, is that this is something which you should be discussing with people and getting guidance about, because there are a lot of different rules and a lot of technical issues concerning it, including a very short 6-month limitation period. So for all these reasons, you really do need to speak with someone to help you make the better decision.
All right, Gavin. I know you're busy, and truly we're grateful that you took some time to clarify that for us, because a lot of redundancies are happening now in the market. Yeah. And I think a lot of people need to understand, what the process is and how it affects them. So thank you for speaking with us.
Hey, thank you for having me, and I hope you have a wonderful day and stay safe.
Thank you, Gavin.
That's Gavin Goff, partner with Myers, Fletcher & Gordon, Jamaica.
All right. And Gavin, well, he's gone, but he did say the calculator is on the Myers, Fletcher & Gordon website. So if you want to go and have a look, then you should, especially if this topic is relevant to you. Coming up next, how to handle the post-redundancy blues. We'll be right back.